Good morning everyone. For this video, I'm going to do the key highlights of demand and supply. So what happens when price of a good changes? Now let us first take a look in the perspective of a consumer. Now you can see that the demand curve is downward sloping. So when price decreases, quantity demanded would increase, causing a downward movement along the demand curve. So this in layman terms would mean that when price drop, consumers will buy more. Now, when price increase instead, quantity demanded now would decrease, causing a upward movement along the demand curve. So then again, it means that when things become more expensive, consumers would buy lesser. Okay, moving on, let us look in the perspective of a seller now. So you can see that the supply curve is upward sloping. So the objective of a seller, a producer, is to make more profits. So when price decreases, quantity supplied will decrease, causing a downward movement along the supply curve. Otherwise, when price increases instead, this would cause quantity supplied to increase, causing an upward movement along the supply curve. So this is telling us that when price increase, it is more profitable for sellers to produce more, hence quantity supply increase. What happens when the market is not in equilibrium? Now you can see that right now this part here is the intersection between the supply curve and the demand curve. So this is the market equilibrium. However, now when market price is above equilibrium instead, now this would cause the quantity demanded to be less than the quantity supplied, leading to a surplus. So there's too much being supplied as compared to demand. Now what happens instead when now that the market price is below the equilibrium? Now this would mean that quantity demanded would be more than quantity supplied, leading to a shortage. So there's too little being supplied and too much being demanded. Alright. However, eventually, in the long term, market forces will push prices back to equilibrium. So what happens when non-price factors change? Now giving you an example now, let's assume it's Chinese New Year, alright? So during Chinese New Year, now you can see that there will be many people buying Mandarin orange because due to festive season, they need it, to go and buy nian, right? Therefore, now this is a non-price factor. So this would cause the demand curve to shift rightwards instead, causing the price to go up and causing the equilibrium quantity to increase. Now, what happens sometimes when you see that there is sale going on? Now probably this is due to because there's not enough buying, leading to a drop in prices. So basically there's a drop in sales, which means there's a decrease in demand. So demand curve shift to the left, causing a drop in equilibrium price and also a drop in equilibrium quantity. Let us look at how non-price factors can shift the supply instead. So when there's a good harvest going on, now probably due to the good weather, the supply of the fruits, the rice, etc., probably would increase. So this can cause an increase in supply, and hence the supply curve will shift to the right, now pushing down the equilibrium price and increasing the equilibrium quantity. So there are also times whereby supply can decrease. So let's give you an example. Now during the durian season, now when you go and buy your Mao Shan Wang durian, you realize that how come so expensive? Now this is usually they will tell you that because this year the harvest of durians no good, that's why supply of durians decrease. So when the supply of durians decrease, supply curve will shift to the left, causing an increase in equilibrium price, which makes your durian so expensive now, and equilibrium quantity to decrease. So far we have only looked at the shift of one particular curve, which is either the demand or the supply curve. However, when both curves shift, it can also cause effects on the equilibrium price as well as quantity. So when both demand and supply increase and shift to the right, the same direction, now we can tell that equilibrium quantity will definitely increase. However, equilibrium price will be indeterminate, it will be uncertain, and this will depend on the magnitude of the shift. Likewise, when both demand and supply decrease in state, now both curves will shift to the left now. Alright, so this will cause the equilibrium quantity to decrease. However, the equilibrium price will still remain indeterminate because this will also depend on the magnitude of the shift. Okay, so the last part, we're going to look at how both curves shift in opposite direction. So what happens when demand increase and supply decrease in state? So demand curve will shift to the right, okay, and supply curve will shift to the left. And you can see on the diagram now, this would definitely push up the equilibrium price. However, the equilibrium quantity would be indeterminate, and this would have to depend on the magnitude of the shift. Okay, on the other hand, when demand decrease and supply increase in state, demand curve will shift to the left and supply curve will shift to the right. Okay, so this would definitely cause the equilibrium price to decrease. However, the equilibrium quantity will be indeterminate. It's the same thing. This will depend on the magnitude of the shift.